Hey.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome back, Misfits, and welcome back to a new episode. Today, we are starting a new series.
New series.
I haven't said that in a while.
Back.
Yeah, I haven't said that in a while. That's so exciting.
Yeah.
So in this series, we'll be sharing some cool and interesting stories of the Bible that may be considered, quote unquote, less popular, but have powerful messages and they're still great to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some might call B-side stories,
Yes.
like, the less popular, but still very good.
Yes, still very good. So this episode we're going to share is about David and Mephibosheth. Say his name 5 times fast.
Yeah, I think it's required if you go to Bible college or
Yes.
something. Like, you have to say it fast and you're in.
You have to say it and you have to spell it. That's the tricky part.
Gotta remember that.
Yeah, there's so many H's and P's and there's a lot going on.
So all you future theologians, keep that in mind.
Yes, and we're going to say his name a bunch of times today.
Yeah,
So
you'll hear it.
Exactly. We'll all get it down today. And at the end, we'll spell it together.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
So we're going to get into the story. So most people are familiar with David and Goliath, King David. He's a psalmist and many other things. We also did an episode a while back, about a year ago, it's called From Shepherd to King. And that was from the Process series, where we talk about David's journey from shepherd to king. Yeah.
Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. The episode's great, though.
Yeah.
But we're biased. But yeah, the episode is, if you want to know more about him, that we did that episode.
Yeah,
that it's
how he became king. That's a good episode, too.
Yeah, it's in there. So we're going to talk about David and Mephibosheth. So here's some backstory. So when David was called to be king, there was a king already in place. His name was Saul. Saul was not doing a good job and was not honoring God, which is why God called David to be king. So many years pass, and there's a lot of obstacles for David during this time, but in the midst of it, he becomes best friends with one of King Saul's son, Jonathan. There's a lot of war and fighting during this time, and the king would lead the fight, and his sons would fight with him. So Jonathan is fighting with his dad. They are fighting the Philistines at this particular moment, although they fight many other people.
It sounds like he's fighting with his dad, but he joined in the fight
with
his
dad. Joined forces with his dad. Yeah.
I just heard you say it. I was like, no, he wasn't fighting with him, but yes, he was fighting with him.
Yes, exactly.
Anyway, we just want to make sure that was clear.
Exactly. So he's joined forces with his dad to fight the Philistines, which is the same group of people that Goliath was from, if you remember. And in a battle with them, 3 of Saul's sons are killed, which one of us was Jonathan. Then shortly after, Saul kills himself. He falls on his sword, to be specific.
Yeah, a very tragic story, of course.
Yes.
Maybe one we'll share another time, but just know,
Yeah, that's something good to talk about. It's like, oh, how did they die?
Yeah, exactly. Famous deaths.
It's a little dark, but sure. So the news reached Jonathan's house, the fact that he had died. Mm-hmm. And this is when we learn that he had a son in 2 Samuel 4:4, and it reads like this. This is in the NLT. Saul's son Jonathan had a son named Mephibosheth, who was crippled as a child. He was 5 years old when the report came from Jezreel that Saul and Jonathan had been killed in battle. When the child's nurse heard the news, she picked him up and fled. But as she hurried away, she dropped him and he became crippled. Mm-hmm. I remember reading this and being like, that must have been one mighty fall. To mess up your whole spine or legs or whatever happened to him.
Yeah, especially at that age, something, it must have been a pretty tough fall.
Yeah, I feel like he broke a bone and they didn't have casts, so they couldn't fix it.
Yeah, or get medical attention quickly enough, and they were fleeing, so maybe there was more damage done, post-fall or something.
Yeah, that's terrible. So, in fear that the enemy would come after the family to hurt and kill them, the nurse takes Jonathan's son Mephibosheth and flees with him to another city, but unfortunately cripples him in the process, like the verse just said.
Yeah.
So this is kind of it about Jonathan's son for a good while. We don't really see much about him. It seems out of place and not sure why it's mentioned at all until later in this book. So hold tight.
Yeah. So when you see this verse, it's talking about just other information. It's talking about the king that was going on and different things that were going on at the time, and then this kind of verse is just kind of, hey, I just need you to know it's fact.
It's me. Yeah.
And so you're kind of confused if you're reading this because you're like, okay, cool, wow,
why
that's
did
sad.
why didn't you tell me
that?
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of obviously
then
get a little bit more context later on. So this is where we're at.
Exactly. So continuing with the story, David gets news of his BFF and mourns his friend. And after his grieving time, he is anointed king, right? So Saul and all of his sons died. and then eventually David is anointed king. Because traditionally the son of the king would take over, David wasn't recognized as king everywhere, and instead one of Saul's other sons takes the throne. Essentially, there are two kings, divided nations, because Israel was one nation and Judah was another, and so he was king of one but not king of the other.
Right.
And there was a whole
and
thing
some
going
people
on.
were following one, and some people were like, "You're not the king. This other guy's the king." And
It's very, very complicated. So a couple of years go by, and the son of Saul, who was appointed king, dies. Really, he was murdered.
Yeah, a lot of murdering happening.
Yes.
This time.
After this, all the tribes of Israel turned to David and recognized him as the king. So you know, he's not.
There's
king.
a lot more detail, obviously,
exactly.
But just know that there were two kings. One was murdered.
And
people were like,
okay, what are we gonna do?
Yeah, we need a king.
Yeah.
They turned to David, and he's like, all right, I'll be king over all the tribes.
Exactly. It's like, fine.
There's a lot more detail, but
fine.
for the sake of the story,
I'll be your dad. Yeah, exactly. So, many years go by, and David is doing a lot of king things, right?
Yeah,
Kingly
he's winning
things.
battles. He's taking back
out
the ark.
there
He's
doing
like
the things. Exactly.
Yeah.
He's worshiping and dancing around with flute. There's a lot of stuff happening. And now we now arrive at 2 Samuel 9, where David is thinking that in honor of his friend Jonathan, he wants to show kindness to anyone from Saul's family. He just has this thought, right?
Yeah, just
the
one
Holy
day he's
Spirit
like,
is just like,
to,
bing. Yeah.
I want to honor my friend.
Exactly.
What can I
I've
do
won
today?
these battles and I have time to think
I've
now.
been king for a while.
What
can
should
I do for
exactly,
my friend?
Exactly. What is my first kingly order? So verses 1 through 6, this is, 2 Samuel 9, verse 1 through 6. One day, David asked, is anyone in Saul's family still alive? Anyone to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake? He summoned a man named Ziba, who had been one of Saul's servants. Are you Ziba? The king asked. Yes, sir, I am, Ziba replied. This sounds like a play. The king then asked him, is anyone still alive from Saul's family? If so, I want to show God's kindness to them. Ziba replied, yes, one of Jonathan's sons is still alive. He is crippled in both feet. Where is he? The king asked. In Lodabar, Ziba told him, at the home of Machir, son of Amiel. So David sent for him and brought him from Machir's home. His name was Mephibosheth. He was Jonathan's son and Saul's grandson. When he came to David, he bowed low to the ground in deep respect. David said, greetings, Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth replied, I am your servant.
We told you we'd say his name a lot.
Exactly. So there's a lot going on here. It's interesting because like the Ziba person is like, hey, you know, David was like, is there anybody alive? And he's like, yeah, but he's crippled.
Yeah, like bringing back
exactly.
that whole...
Like, let me tell you though.
Like you need to know something about him.
Like when someone's like weird or there's something about them or it's like, you know, he has this tick or whatever. It's just
what
like,
you do with me?
Yeah. So we do with
like,
each other.
Hey, you want to miss?
So we do with each other.
I want you to meet my friend Yadi, but just so you know, she's weird.
Yeah. Just
I accept it. It's fine.
Just so you know. But yeah, it's just interesting how he brings that up.
Yeah. How still after all these years, right?
Yeah.
Like that's still something that they point out about him.
Exactly. And I heard in a sermon too about how he was in like this guy Machir's house and it was like he's the son of the king's son, right? So he's royalty by blood and he's living in some other city in somebody else's house, which is just shows you how far and how low really his life had become at that point.
He had gotten. Yeah. So we see that even though all the family drama from Saul and his other sons, David still respected that position of king. If you know the story of David, and in the other episode we did talk about how even though Saul was always trying to get after him, like he never dishonored him. He always recognized him as king. Yeah. So we see here years later, David is now king. Like he still want to honor Saul's house, basically, right? So David still respected that position of king and wanted to honor his friendship with Jonathan, even after all this time. So we also see that David had Mephibosheth brought to him, which essentially is bringing him back home, right? He's like you said, he was living in a foreign land. He's the son of royalty, and he's over here like no one even knows.
Staying with his homie and his roommates.
And David's like, no, let's make this right. Let's bring you back home. So essentially, he's coming back home. So he no longer has to be far away from his homeland. He can now come back to the land where his family is from, right? And then we also see how Mephibosheth responds when meeting King David. He bows down. So if you recall, again, Saul considered David basically an enemy. Like he started off as a friend and then he like hated him and wanted to kill him. So I don't think Mephibosheth really was sure like, hey, why is David calling me? Like, is this...
He probably thought he wanted to kill him.
Or hurt him or like do something, right? So he couldn't really be sure. Like, yes, he was best friends with my dad, but like my grandpa hated him. So what's going on? So he wanted to make sure, hey, David, I know you're the king, and I want to show that respect and acknowledge that you're the king. Like, I'm not here to, like, take anybody's place kind of thing. So you can see that from Mephibosheth. And then we continue to verses 7 through 13. And this is David's responses. Don't be afraid, David said. I intend to show kindness to you because of my promise to your father, Jonathan. I will give you all the property that once belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will eat here with me at the king's table. Mephibosheth bowed respectfully and exclaimed, Who is your servant, that you should show such kindness to a dead dog like me? Then the king summoned Saul's servant Ziba and said, I have given your master's grandson everything that belonged to Saul and his family. You and your sons and servants are to farm the land for him to produce food for your master's household. But Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, will eat here at my table. Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Ziba replied, Yes, my lord, the king, I am your servant, and I will do all that you have commanded. And from that time on, Mephibosheth ate regularly at David's table, like one of the king's own sons. Mephibosheth had a young son named Micah. From then on, all the members of Ziba's household were Mephibosheth's servants, and Mephibosheth, who was crippled in both feet, lived in Jerusalem and regularly ate at the king's table.
That's crazy.
So basically restored, right? Mm-hmm. His life restored, redeemed from him living on the outskirts, from not knowing it was safe to even come home anymore. And here he is now in the king's palace, eating at his table, getting everything back, right? Like his grandfather's land back, his family's back, everything.
Yeah. And something that I never noticed before was that, he's like, who am I that you're going to treat me like this? Mm-hmm. Like, I basically,
kind of lost his identity,
like
right?
a dead dog like me. Mm-hmm. Why would you do this? And just like God does, like Moses and Abraham, when they ask like questions that they don't answer them. David said, Ziba, he's going to get everything back. I'm not even going to address him right now because he's having a moment. So let's just give him everything back. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. I never noticed that before. Yeah. He doesn't answer him. He's like, I'm not.
He just continues with what he has for him.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's what God does with us.
And we can identify with Mephibosheth, right? Like feeling like unworthy of all this stuff. And God's like, we're going to move on because I already told you that, that this is your place. Exactly. So we're going to just keep going. Uh-huh. But so David reassured him, right, of his intentions. Mephibosheth is like shocked. David then, of course, goes above and beyond, tells him that everything that used to belong to his grandfather, Saul, is his now. And David basically like adopts him, right? Mm-hmm. He was like, listen, I had a lot of love for your father and your crazy grandfather, although he did try to kill me. Mm-hmm. I will be faithful to the oath I made with my bestie for the restie, and you will stay here with me and live like royalty, like you're supposed to. Mm-hmm. This was crazy because usually, whenever a new king would take over, you kill everybody. Yeah, which again, that was kind of the fear.
All the remaining family members from the other king, you kill them all.
Yeah, because you don't want any of them to try to overthrow you, take over, try to be king as well. Mm-hmm. You would kill them all. Yeah. Which again, this is why Mephibosheth came and was like, I'm gonna be like, you're the king. I'm assuring you, please don't kill me. Mm-hmm. I want you to know I'm not here to take over your throne.
Yes, exactly. I don't want it.
I just want to live.
Mm-hmm. Please.
And we can see that, of course, David was like, of course I want you to live. I want you to live here. But that's usually what happened. And so David did, of course, the complete opposite. Like we're saying, he instead reestablished his position and basically said, like, you're part of my family, you're part of your royalty, so I'm going to treat you like so. And
which is how he was treating Saul. He literally did the same thing. Yes. He's like, hey, you're an anointed one of God. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna hurt you. And then of course he made the promise to Jonathan, and he's like, no, I'm gonna take care of you.
Continued. Continued that.
What a guy, David.
So that's the story of how David and Mephibosheth kind of reunited. Yeah. And how their stories come together. Yes.
And we never hear from him again.
There's other things that happen. But it's kind of like,
this is the conclusion of Mephibosheth in the Bible. I'm sure he lived a nice, happy life, but
he lived there, his descendants, other things. Yeah. But the Bible does go on to other stories. So.
Exactly. Just not about Mephibosheth.
So if you're looking for more, like, where are they now? We don't know after this. We don't know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it is important to mention that Mephibosheth being crippled is mentioned several times. Yes. As we have also, like, pointed, like, hey, look, he said it again. Yeah. And it's important because his being crippled represented the fact that David didn't really gain anything from helping him.
Nothing.
Like, he wasn't coming to like help him in his house.
No.
Or like to
I'm
go
gonna
farm.
make him work for me. You're gonna be the captain of my army. Like, he could literally do nothing for David.
Exactly. And he's like, no, I still want you here. So David had nothing to gain. Mephibosheth, again, couldn't do anything for him. Similar to us, right? Like doing something for Jesus. We can't.
No, we can't.
We can try and pretend like, yay, I'm doing this for him, but he doesn't need us to do anything. So he's like, nah, you don't need to bring me anything. I'm giving you something.
Yeah, exactly. I am the giver.
Yeah. So he already paid it all. And in return, he's just like, just accept me, serve me.
Just be
here in my Father's kingdom. You don't need to do anything.
Yeah, because you can't.
Because you can.
Just like Mephibosheth.
I mean, you can try, but it's not going to work.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
So, yeah, we definitely love this story because even though it seems small and kind of hidden, right, between all these big accomplishments that David had and, of course, David being king and all the things that he went through, it really does reflect that picture of God's love for us, right? And we are Mephibosheth. Yeah. And we really look at it. So you might say, like, how are we like him? If you didn't catch on,
if you don't feel very Mephibosheth-y,
because I'm feeling very Mephibosheth-y right here. So we are weak, lame, and fearful before God, who's our king, right? Like we feel like we're not enough and all and worthy and all this stuff. We are separated from our king because of our sin. We know that the sin that we have separates us from. We separated ourselves from the king because we didn't know him, right? We didn't know of his love for us, so we ourselves also separated from him. And we need to receive his kindness. Like David was giving kindness to Mephibosheth, we need to also receive that from God. The king returns to us more than what we have lost or anything from when we were separated from him. So, Mephibosheth came thinking like, do I work for you then? Like, or am I going to be your servant? And it's like, no, I'm going to give you so much more. You're going to be part of my family. God does the same thing for us. Like we think, a lot of times we come back to God, it's like, just let me live or whatever. And he's like, no, I want to give you blessings and I want to use you and I want to do all these things for you. Yeah, because that's
what I was going to say. We sometimes come back to God like Mephibosheth and be like, oh, please don't kill me.
Like, I just want to come back to church. Can I just pray? Like, sometimes.
Yeah, like when you're feeling that condemnation. Yeah. And you're just like, no, I'm just like, I'm okay being here, but please don't, like, smite me.
Yeah.
And God is over here, like, just come sit at my table. Come on, man.
Like, I have a plate for you already. Exactly. Like, can you just come? Yeah. And we can eat at the king's table. Yep. Right? He has a plate. He has a place for us. It's already prepared. We have access to this relationship with him, right? We can be at his table and we can have a relationship with him, which is amazing. And he doesn't immediately take away our weaknesses or lameness, right? Like he didn't cure Mephibosheth or be like, hey, you're good now that you're in the royal house again. But he does give us favor and standing that overcomes the sting of, any weaknesses that we might have or he changes the way we think about ourselves away. Yes,
and he is
and
with
we understand that
in
our
weakness,
he is stronger. And so we understand, like, you're changing the way I view my shortcomings and my weaknesses. So that's beautiful as well. Yeah,
because his weakness didn't cancel him out.
Right. Like, and it seems like people kept pointing it out, like, hey, he's crippled. Hey, he's lame.
Yeah.
And
like, why do you want
bring
him? Exactly.
Did I ask you?
I asked you if there was anyone alive.
Yeah.
That's the only question.
And I told you to bring him.
Right.
That's all I asked.
Yeah,
I didn't
that's crazy.
know
like
what
everyone's
was going on with
literally trying to disqualify him before he even gets there. And
like
David
pointing
is
out,
like, for the love, just bring him. Yeah.
Is there somebody? Okay, bring him. Basically, yeah. And last, no matter who we are or what we have done, the king still loves us unconditionally. So it doesn't matter. He will always, always love us. So Mephibosheth willingly gave up everything, right? Whatever he thought he had, this life that he had when he fled, he's like, I'll leave it all behind and I'm here to be at the king's table. He realized that the king didn't know him anything, but still was treating him like royalty. Jesus owes us nothing, but he freely forgives us and cleanses us of our sins. And we can see that in 1 John 1:9.
Yes. And that concludes why we are all Mephibosheth.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we hope you enjoyed this episode. It's a really good story. And like Yadi said, it's like really kind of like this tiny story in the midst of David's like amazing trajectory of like from shepherd to king and his ups and his downs and all these things. But not only does, of course, this show us a picture of God and of Jesus and everything that they've done for us, It also shows us David's heart,
yes.
right? It shows us why he was given the quote unquote name of like being a man after God's own heart,
right, yeah.
because he's showing the heart of God by taking care of Mephibosheth, which is why we can see Jesus through David in this instance, right? So yeah, we just wanted to just give you this B-side story that you may have not heard before, may not have heard this perspective before. And we'll be back next week with another one.
Yeah.
Yes, we will. So as always, this is Fran.
This is Yadi.
We are the Midtown Misfits, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.